Welcome to the Kraken. I'm your host, Crazy Canuck. Today we're going to discuss everything you need to know about the new travel ban. The Trump administration has now rolled out its new version of the travel ban. Let's get into it. The executive order protecting the nation from terrorist entry into the United States. They wrote the crap out of this thing. When announcing this, members of the administration made it very clear that the president is allowed to do all of these things. This is one interpretation of their constitutional powers. What we've been seeing at the start of this new administration is them testing out their boundaries. Not unlike the raptors in Jurassic Park. They're starting to learn. They're starting to figure out where they can go without getting zapped. I'm going to be giving you the highlights of this and posting a link to the actual executive order in the description. Section 1 contains a detailed defense of the first executive order and gives explicit reasons why each of these 6 nations have been included in the ban. In the original, they had 7. They've removed Iraq. Section 2 talks about what this thing actually does, which is ban entry from 6 countries into the United States for 90 days. And all refugees for 120 days. Now, Iraq has come off the list, and the reason they're citing for that is because Iraq made significant improvements in the areas that the government would like them to after the first ban. This is a weird thing to include, because they removed one, and it seems like they did it to try to calm everybody down, and in doing so they could actually have opened themselves up to legal challenge if it seemed that Iraq did not make significant improvement, or made fewer improvements than other countries on the list. So let's look at who this applies to. Anybody who is seeking to become a refugee within the United States who is going to be arriving after March 16th and has not yet been approved will be blocked from entering the country. Now, you're going to hear a couple different arguments about this from the different sides. The administration is going to be telling you that multiple refugees have been arrested on terrorist charges, where opponents of the bill will be telling you that no refugee has ever committed a terrorist act. Both of these things are true. Those who are not refugees that will be affected is a little bit more complicated, but we're going to go through it. If you are outside of the United States, your primary citizenship is from one of these banned countries, and you do not currently have visa entry privileges or refugee privileges or some other form of documentation saying that you are allowed to come to the United States, you are no longer allowed to immigrate to the United States through standard means or as a refugee. If you have a visa to the United States, you are not affected by this. If you had a visa to the United States before January 27th or before today, both wordings are in there, you will not be affected by this. If you are a dual citizen whose passport is not issued by one of the banned countries. So for example, if you're a Canadian and a Syrian, but you have a Canadian passport with dual citizenship, you are not affected by this. If you are a dual Canadian-Syrian with a Syrian passport, you are affected by this. If you're traveling to the US on a student visa or on a work visa, you are not affected by this. Now, the actual dates in question are quite important, and where you are right now is also very important, because if you are currently inside the United States, you're not affected by this. The bill would seem to say that nobody is getting deported over this. Exceptions to this can be made by the Department of Homeland Security. In the first bill, this was pretty much the only way to get an exception, so it is good that they've laid out some specific reasons instead of just swamping that office with thousands of requests. I still expect it to move extremely slowly because the department isn't designed to take on this many requests for exemptions. There's also a detailed list of what you need to get an exemption, so you can have a look here if you actually are seeking to enter the United States. They also make exceptions for diplomats because they were quite loud when they got blocked last time, and those who have already been granted or are seeking asylum. Now, this last bit about asylum is interesting because they had a clause in the last one that really made it look like a Muslim ban that stated that if you were seeking asylum as a religious minority, then you had priority over all other refugees coming from the region, which was a problem because the majority religion in all those regions were Muslims. So effectively, that said, all non-Muslims get in first. That wording has been removed from this bill. While Iraq is not on the list, when we get to Section 4, we see that they are increasing restrictions on those coming from Iraq, which sound like extreme vetting, which they absolutely are, because Section 5 is extreme vetting. They have specific descriptions of what's going on in there. I'll let you read those for yourself. They're going to take a while to explain, and you've heard them all. This is what Donald Trump was talking about during his campaign. This applies to everybody immigrating to the United States. not just from these countries, not just Muslims. If I try to immigrate to America, I will now go through extreme vetting. Well, not now, as of March 16th, which there's no way I could get something processed before then. Anyway, Section 11. Good Lord. There's also wording in here that directs the Department of Homeland Security to track crimes committed by immigrant populations and publish them twice a year. Great. This is exactly the trend that I was talking about in my last video. You can have a look at it. I'm gonna link it. It's on the channel. Whatever. Now, a piece of good news that appears to be in the ban is that if you had your visa revoked illegally back on the last ban, it seems like it will still be honored. I'm not actually sure how the heck they're going to put this into practice, but I do know that there have been legal groups fighting to make this happen. So the fact that it's in the new order seems to be throwing them a bone, right? Trying to lessen the blowback from this bill by giving them a couple things that they can like in it. This bill goes into effect on March 16th, 12:01 a.m. This likely means that the administration is going to avoid the initial shockwave that they got when they signed the last one, with people being detained in airports and losing their ability to enter the United States after they were already in the air. The final piece in this bill is probably one of the most important ones. It's Section 15, and it concerns severability. What it means is that this executive order is far more robust than the last one, because if they find something in here that's illegal, they can just split it off from the bill, and that will have to fight on its own while the rest of the ban remains in place. Meaning that if this thing is going to be stopped, removed, had a stay put on it, eventually repealed, it's going to have to be done piece by piece by piece. And odds are it's going to leave behind remnants such as extreme vetting. All right, those are the nuts and bolts of this new piece of legislation, but what does it mean? Is this a travel ban? Yes, this is a travel ban. This is blocking people from those 6 nations for traveling to the United States if they don't already have permission to do so. So by the time we're in April, unless somebody got their permission long in advance, we won't be meeting any travelers from these 6 countries. Will this thing be permanent? In the wording of the legislation, no. However, there are a lot of very vague provisions in here granting additional authority to the Department of Homeland Security. They're instructed to publish a report in 20 days, that countries need to comply with the report in 50 days, and that during the course of these reports, the DHS can add any country to the banned list or remove any country from the banned list. And it doesn't say add them to the list within this 90-day period. It says assign them for similar treatment. So what that means, as far as I understand, is that at any point while this legislation is in place, DHS can pick a country and ban all travel from it for 90 days. The 90-day time frame seems set in stone when you look at the bill. However, there could be provisions made off of it. This could be used as legal precedent if it's allowed to stand. These were the main fears around the last bill, and they're not different now. The other question of, is this a Muslim ban? What the administration will tell you is that they never use the words of any religion here in this new bill. They don't describe one, they're not specifically targeting one. What their opponents will say is that all 6 of these countries are Muslim majority countries. They're the only ones that you picked. You picked them for seemingly arbitrary reasons because there are other countries that seem to fit the bill better. Just because the administration removed the phrase about allowing religious minorities to enter does not free them up from this potential legal challenge. They are still open to challenges from the constitutionality of this bill under the 1st, 4th, and 5th Amendment, if my assessment is correct, and this is definitely going to end up in court at some point. Again, we bring back severability. It's going to be difficult for the whole thing to be addressed in the same courtroom. It almost certainly won't be. Executive orders like this can be rolled back for 2 main reasons. 1, it was illegal or unconstitutional in its wording, or 2, it was illegal or unconstitutional in its intent. For an example of this, we can look at the voter ID laws that got repealed in North Carolina. The laws themselves did not target any specific group. However, it became clear to the judge who was presiding over the case that this was directed at repressing the African American vote, and as such, the law was thrown out. A similar thing could happen here, particularly because we have lots of audio and video of the president saying he's going to ban all the Muslims, as well as audio and video from Rudy Giuliani saying, the president asked me, how do I ban all the Muslims? And I said, do it this way. While there will certainly be demonstrations around this, I do expect them to be of a slightly lower fervor than the last one, because you won't have people detained in the airports waiting to see lawyers who are being blocked by Department of Homeland Security members. It hopefully won't be as big a mess as the last one. However, there will certainly be legal challenges made to this legislation. That does it for me today. I don't want to tell you how you should think about this issue. I just want to make sure that you have the facts that you need. If you found the video helpful, give it a like, consider sending it to other people who might need this information, and if you want to join in the conversation, absolutely throw a comment down below. I will get back to you on this. I've been very busy lately, but I will get back to you on this. This has been my first effort to cover a story the same day that it actually broke. A lot of preparation went into it. I really hope it came across well. We here at The Kraken thank you so much for joining us, and as always, be good to each other.